of the building. Bathrooms, if you don't know, if you exit out these doors and take a right, you'll see a green sign pointing you in the direction, but it still can be confusing. You'll need to go through another set of glass doors. If you found the elevator, they're to the right in that little elevator lobby on this floor. And so it sounds complicated, it's really not. This is a casual event, and so if at any point you need to get up and excuse yourself, please do. On your tables, you have question cards. These that look just like this. If at any point during the program you have a question, please write it down. Those will be collected, and in the interest of time, trying to get through as many questions as possible, those will be asked directly to the panel by a museum staff. And so towards the, at about quarter till, I'll remind you, and you just hold your card up, we'll collect them and get those questions asked. We want you to be able to participate in this important question as well. And as we have been doing for several months now, this will be live streamed by Channel 9, and we want to thank our partners at Griffin Media for doing that. That really doesn't change anything for you here in the audience, but there is a camera back there, and for those who aren't here, they're able to watch a live stream on both the Channel 9's website as well as ours. All right, so we're going to get started here in just a few minutes. If you haven't already, please grab food in the lobby. There is water and tea over here on the side, and if you need anything at all, we have staff in the back ready to help. And so we'll get started here in a minute. Also, if you haven't introduced yourself to those at your table, please do that. Get to know each other for until we begin. Okay. Well, I wanted to welcome everyone who is in the room. It is so refreshing to see such a collection. A middle school class from Chandler is here. We have a group of teachers who came and have been actually here all morning, and they're excited to join us for this this better conversation. This is part of our monthly lunch series, and so if you're just hearing about this, we do this every month on the third Wednesday. We tried to pick a date that didn't conflict with anything else going on, and of course that's impossible, so this is as good a day as any other, I guess. And I also want to welcome everyone who's watching through News 9's live stream. So glad to provide this opportunity for more people to see the programming here and dive into some, important questions. This is our grounding virtues, which we highlight at the beginning of every meeting. We have programming connected to our Better Conversations program, and teaching and practicing the grounding virtues should allow us to be able to talk about anything. I truly believe that. And if we want to move the needle, right, if you want to make change in our society, we've got to be able to talk to each other. Right? It starts with communication. And so things like hospitality and patience and humility, approaching situations with adventurous civility, we want to keep those in mind. And I challenge you in the next month to attempt, right, to practice these in your day-to-day interactions. Programming as well as content and materials are on our website. And so if you're interested, please check them out at memorialmuseum.com. We are in our 168 days of remembrance here. We have these conversations on sacred ground, and we never want to forget that 168 is not a number, but represents individuals with families and communities and lives that were ripped away from us with an act of domestic terrorism. On April 19th, 1995, Robin Ann Huff was employed at the Federal Credit Union inside the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. She was 37 years old, and in the words of her husband, was very ready to start a family and was expecting a child due in June. This event that morning prevented that from ever happening. She's one of 3 chairs out on our memorial that has 2 names on it. Her name as well as the name that had been chosen for her baby, Amber Denise Huff. And so I would like for us to take a moment and have a moment of silence as we come here to remember those who were killed, those who survived, and those changed forever. Thank you. I'd encourage you to keep those impacted so directly in mind as we dive into this question, because we will be dealing with the trials of perpetrators, and we never want to mention the perpetrators' names without also talking about those who are so directly impacted. Now, the perpetrators themselves, they disagreed in 1995 and the years preceding with the direction of the government. They didn't agree with all the policies, but they did not engage in the political system, the democratic process that was afforded to them in our Constitution. Instead, they chose violence. And they believed that this act would start a civil war. There was an army in waiting that would rise up. The great irony is that exactly the opposite happened. Right? This event united the country, and our civil fabric showed off its strength. Now, that wasn't guaranteed. It took individuals, both within the government as well as citizens across the nation, to make sure that our institutions stood. And today, we dive into questions about some of those foundational principles that were so important then. You know, when we were given an enemy from within, and we're dealing with hate that killed 168 people and ripped a hole in the heart of this country, we ask why the rule of law mattered, both then and why does it matter today? Now, I have two very appropriate individuals who are going to join me in this conversation today. Vicki Behenna, who is today the Oklahoma County District Attorney. In 1997, it was days later that she was became part of a prosecution team that would go on and ensure the conviction of Timothy McVeigh in 1997. Joining her is Wes Lane, who was the district attorney for Oklahoma County from 2001 to 2006. He took the lead of the office at a time in which the state was debating on whether we should have a state trial for Terry Nichols. And he served through the conviction of Terry Nichols in 2004. I hope I got all that right. Now, from that point in history to today, they have a plethora of experiences that make them more than qualified to tackle this difficult question. So if you would, please give a warm welcome to our guests. Oh, and there they are.
Oh, look at that hair.
Wow.
Jeez.
I still don't have gray hair, huh? Right. Wow, look at that.
Both in 97 and about 2001, if I'm not mistaken.
And that's 2000, those are 2004.
Oh, 2004. Okay. All right.
I'm trying to look like I'm knowing what I'm doing, and it's, I'm not sure it was always working.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad you said yes. I know that sharing these stories aren't always easy, and so it is, every time I make an ask for these sorts of programs, it is, you know, like I definitely recognize that this is not an easy thing to do. So thank you so much. Now, on that day, I myself was about 1,000 miles, actually more than 1,000 miles away in a classroom. And I felt not the ground shake, but the heartache. And so I can only imagine what it was like here in Oklahoma. And so I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share your story of that day and just kind of like the weeks, that immediate sort of impact from your eyes here in 1995. And so Vicki, I'd like to start with you,
Sure.
if you would.
Sure. On April 19th, 1995, I was an assistant United States attorney serving here in the Western District of Oklahoma. I was a federal prosecutor. I was actually in Washington, D.C., teaching a class at the Attorney General Advocacy Institute. And when I walked into the building where the class was going on, I was told, Vicki, something has happened in Oklahoma City. I, at that time, turned on CNN and saw the north half of the building gone. And I called the office and I asked what was going on, because we had lawyers. We weren't actually in the federal building at that time or the annex. We'd moved out of that office to the First Oklahoma Tower. And I called and I asked what was going on, because we still had grand jury, we still had trials. And I was told that we thought that there was a huge gas explosion. Of course, as the day proceeded, we learned quite well what had happened. The next phone call I got was from my office, and I was told to return to the Oklahoma City immediately and to report to the command post, which was set up, I think, on 6th Street, which was the old Southwestern building. And so I came back that next day. I left early in the morning and reported to Oklahoma City to the command post by about noon that day. I did know that we had a personal friend. My oldest son, Michael, had a baseball coach who was missing. He was a lawyer at HUD, and I know my husband and my boys, I don't talk about this very often, were in touch with his family, Donna, and the boys, just trying to make sure they were okay and doing what they could to kind of support the family. And Scott was keeping me, my husband was keeping me informed about the search and how Donna was doing. So I report back to the command center, and we immediately start to work.
Was that Donna Weaver?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
Mike Weaver's wife, yes.
I did not know the connection. Oh. Wes, I'm afraid I don't know your story at all from
That's
that
okay.
day.
That's okay. Just like there will be this April, there was that April on the 19th a Metro prayer breakfast downtown, and it had just broken up. I was attending. I was on leave from the Oklahoma County DA's office. I was an assistant district attorney at that time in special prosecutions, and I left the prayer breakfast and was on the road out to go see my wife. My wife is and was a facial plastic surgeon, and so I show up at her office where they too have the TV going, and they're thinking it's a gas line deal. But then the call went out for medical personnel, so she shut down the office, and she and her surgical nurse came downtown and were part of the triaging, and then ultimately, I mean, just the heartbreaking story of her having to, she said this woman who had been injured, she said it was like somebody took a bread knife and just sliced her face, and one of their, when the building collapsed, one daughter, there were two daughters, husband and wife, two girls as I recall. One daughter fell and died through the floor, and the other one lived. And it was just, and that was the beginning of really, and in fact, not having the office to be, and since I wasn't at the office at the time, I like many of you will remember, we have this collective angst. What can we do to help? And as you all remember, the call doing this, and so I was attending a downtown church at 10th and Robinson, and so I'd come in the early mornings and was a part of they'd be cooking breakfasts for the workers, but there's just this collective. You get
Call
it.
for help.
Yeah, and how can I
can I
step
help?
up? And with our different talents, many of us found ways to help.
Yeah.
Now, Vicki, you found your way on the prosecution team. I'm curious about your feelings about that, being so closely connected to this event, and also, was it difficult to balance sort of the public demand for conviction with the rule of law?
Yeah, so let me break that down a little bit. I mean, as Wes said, and as you all know, everybody wanted to help. We wanted to do what we could do. I was in the command post. My husband, we had 3 young sons at the time. My husband was working the 800 number because at that point in time, people were calling in with tips about what they saw and what they reported in downtown. And so we were working 12, 14 hours a day. Friends were helping us with our kids. And so you don't, at the moment, when you're in it, you don't really worry about what's going on with you. And quite honestly, I knew the boys were okay, and I didn't really consider my own mental health until much later, so I'll come back to that. I remember being in the command post, and I mean, Bob Ricks was there, Merrick Garland was there, Arlene Joplin was there, who was our chief of criminal at the time. I mean, everybody was in this conference room. I mean, and you have to understand, I mean, this was an abandoned brick building, and FBI agents and Oklahoma City police officers and OSBI, everybody was running through the command post doing whatever they could. And we all sat in the command post, and within 3 days, we knew who the perpetrators were. The evidence led us right to them. And after things calmed down, after we did that initial appearance of Tim McVeigh at Tinker Air Force Base that I think you helped set up and arrange for, Bob, after that, we sat down, and I remember Merrick Garland telling us very distinctly, for those of us that were on that prosecution team, we're going to do everything right. If we have consent to search, we're not going to go on the consent. We're going to go get a search warrant. We're going to prepare an affidavit. We're going to establish the probable cause. Because it's not just Oklahoma City that's watching this investigation and prosecution. The nation and the world is watching this prosecution. And what he wanted is not anybody at any point in time to go, oh, they jumped to conclusions, they didn't get the right guys. We're going to take our time and we're going to do it right. We used grand jury. I mean, we did grand jury for about 3 months and actually issued indictments from that grand jury for both McVeigh and Terry Nichols. But that was my first impression with Merrick, and that was, I don't care what you all want to do. I don't care what shortcuts you want to take. We're not taking them. We're going to do it right. That statement has lived with me my entire career of making sure we do things right. The community needed to have faith, not just in the investigation, but the process was fair, that the defendant got all the rights he needed, whether they were, and there were a lot of delays, right? But it just needed to be fair. There didn't need to be any questions because we knew ultimately what we were going to ask for in the end, which was a sentence of death. It wasn't until years later, after I came back, I mean, we started the prosecution in '97. I had a small family, or a young family. I only made it through the McVeigh prosecution. I couldn't stay for the Terry Nichols. I felt, for the first time in my life, really unanchored. I knew a lot of people that died. The Secret Service agents I worked with, the DEA agents. Robin Huff, I had been in her office about 2 weeks before getting a loan on a van, a conversion van, that we were buying for our family to do. My husband's from Miami, Florida, and we took road trips down to Miami every summer. So I was sitting in her office. I was very well connected. As I said, Mike Weaver was my oldest son's baseball coach. And so we were going to funeral after funeral after funeral. And at the time when you're in the push for doing the investigation and you know, you're operating like a lawyer. And it wasn't until much later that I realized how traumatic it was for me. And I remember, I think I've told this story before on another panel, I remember coming back from Denver, and it was July, August of now '97, so it's 2 years later, and Oklahoma City had moved on. Everybody had their jobs, everybody was doing their thing, and I was stuck on April 19th, 1995, and I was angry. I was angry at everybody. I was angry at Oklahoma City for moving on. How dare you? I remember there was all the talk about the survivor tree, and I'm thinking, I don't care about a tree. I mean, I understand now the symbolism, but you understand my point is that, you know, there were people that lost lives, there were families, there were survivors. And quite honestly, I spent about 18 months in therapy trying to understand that I couldn't remember anything. Even during the prosecution time, I remember reading interview reports and thinking, what am I reading? Slow down, Vicki, just read this again. And I learned much later that was obviously the trauma of the situation. So I've said now, with the benefit of hindsight many years, that I was probably far too close to that prosecution to be on the prosecution team. Again, I remember being very angry at Janet Reno when she brought prosecutors from outside of Oklahoma City to sit on that. I understand now perfectly why she did that. I was way too close to that prosecution.
Interesting. And so fast forward to 2001, much of the city in Vicki's word has moved on. And so if you're a young person in the audience, you might be surprised that, I mean, in 1997, there was no question that a trial was going to happen. In 2001, there was a debate. And so I'm curious, from Wes, from your eyes, you know, what were the arguments against a state trial, bringing state charges against Terry Nichols, and ultimately, how did you make that decision?
Well, boy, this was I mean, honestly, was probably going from naive assistant district attorney, doing his business, trying a lot of cases, you do this, and it was always easy when you're an assistant to just pass it on. Well, I can't make the final call on that, and so you pass a buck. Well, there was no buck place to start, which you well know all about that, and so so in this particular instance, I was appointed. My boss, Bob Macy, who had been all about and intensely in hot pursuit of trying Terry Nichols in Oklahoma County for state charges. He had gotten so ill. He was in physical pain from the Terry Nichols case, and it caused him to retire early. I get appointed, and I'd had nothing to do with any of the conversation. By that time, I was running the juvenile division. So I'm in a different building in a different part of the city, and had no real touch with the whys or whatever. And in fact, my opinion, I realized it was controversial. I just didn't realize how incredibly controversial, because Vicki, you put it really well, and I hadn't thought about it. Like, the city had moved on, and that's what I ran into. And so when I became district attorney, Terry Nichols was sitting in the Oklahoma County Jail. He was already here. And when Governor Frank Keating was just introducing me to the public, I wasn't even the district attorney yet, and the first question to me out of the box was not, "Hey Wes, tell us about yourself." It's, "What are you going to do with Terry Nichols?" And in fact, the question was, what are you going to talk to the victims clamoring about trying Terry Nichols? And this is my great first moment of becoming aware that people actually cared what I said, because I stuck my foot in my mouth immediately, and I said, well, because I think, honestly today as I look back, I think one of the reasons why, now I'm just talking here, but I really think one of the reasons why I was appointed was because I was opposed to the Terry Nichols case being tried in state court. And I had voiced that. And the reason why was because I figured he'd already had a trial, and on top of that, I had been a prosecutor. I tried a lot of murder cases, and we had a severe backlog of murder cases. And so my concern was not about, and I don't want to sound, I wasn't concerned about the victims, but what my real concern was about a particular set of victims in other murder cases and their families who had never had a trial at that point in time. There'd been nothing. And so when I showed up, I just said, well, I think there are going to be some changes. Oh my gosh. And so what became the scenario was, in Oklahoma County, in that area, it's probably less so because there's so many different media outlets, 1,000, whether it's on your phone or, well, there were only 3, major stations at the time. And so you're a public figure, but then, and pretty intensely so, I literally couldn't go to a Jimmy's Egg or be in an elevator with other people without somebody asking me or giving me a piece of their mind, might be a better way to put it, on the Terry Nichols case. And resoundingly, they didn't want to. And it was always talking about money and all of that sort of stuff, and I'd had no idea that this was so significant. So all of that to say, it was like a furnace blast as I began the process, because I knew that I needed to talk to the victims. That's one thing that Bob Macy had really drilled into us, and I'd worked for him for 16 years. And that is, you don't just don't do something just because you want to. You talk to the victims' families about this. And so in July, I went to meet with family members of the Oklahoma City bombing victims. And that's when I got kind of taken to school, and I realized that, and as astounding as it was, these folks, not all of them, but I would say the vast majority of them felt this way, and intensely so. I thought they were just wanting his head. I thought this was just a bloodlust thing. And what I was met with were people that were saying, I'll never forget it, nobody has ever been held accountable for the death of my sister, my father, my this, and that just, I didn't, what are you even talking about? And so anyway, I don't want to just, I could spend the next hour, and I don't want to do that. But it was a tough time. It was a tough time.
So the federal level, there is no crime for the murder of the citizens of a state, and so
What? I'm sorry.
A murder for the citizens of the state.
Yeah.
And so the federal trial was not for the 168, right? It was for federal agents that were killed in the attack. Is that correct?
That's right. Right. In the conspiracy to commit the bombing act. I mean, there was a general conspiracy count, but the murder counts were only on the federal officers.
So, I mean, very technically speaking, they were absolutely right when they said that there was no trial for their loved one.
They were.
Justice for their loved one.
And that was the slow process over that summer of coming to the realization that there was a justice issue, and that these folks were deeply and genuinely broken at the thought that there had not been a specific, Timothy McVeigh has been found guilty of the death of, blank. And that's when I realized that I was, and that's when it really got hard, because you start realizing that there's a lot of people that don't want you to do it, and one of the reasons that they don't want you to do it is because of the money, and that became a huge issue. And when I say money, it's the court system, the justice system. So here's the competing justice things. I learned, and I didn't realize, that the Oklahoma County Courthouse is like ground zero for the money for the entire justice system of the state. And so I would have folks that were angry with me. I had a district. Now then, I'm going to shut up here, okay? But I mean, folks, I'm telling you, this was like, hello, welcome to grow up time, so you've got so I'm minding my own business office. A civil judge is apologizing. This comes back to me. The civil judge, a district judge in Oklahoma County Courthouse, in the course of a civil trial, is apologizing to her jury for the condition of the rug in the jury room. And this is what she said: "I'm just so sorry that the rug and the jury room is just so pathetic, but Mr. Lane insists upon trying Terry Nichols." Now, folks, that was just not unusual. So anyway, and then you get invited to the Chief Justice's office in a very kind way. He's a lovely man. He never told me, because he couldn't order me to do squat. But when they say, but when he would politely just remind me of how much money it was costing to do this trial business, but never say, don't do it, but just encouraging you, and he's a lovely man, never said anything, but what's the message? Anyway, so this is the stuff going on behind the scenes, and
well, it's interesting. Now, part of that expense is to ensure due process and the rights of the accused and a fair trial.
Exactly.
So I'm curious, and I want both of your perspectives on this. Looking back through history, if you feel like making sure these were fair trials, was that a stabilizing force ultimately for the community? And it's 97 was different than 2004, but in both cases, I'm curious if you felt like, following the rule of law and making sure these trials were fair, if that actually was a stabilizing force for the community that was grieving and going through their various levels of healing.
Well, look with Vicki, the city was able to move on.
Well, that's right. I mean, I do feel, there were always those documentaries about John Doe 2 and some other people from the Philippines. I mean, I think there are always going to be stories like that. But, you know, I'm asked to talk about the bombing, you know, often. And one of the things I always go through is step by step the evidence that we found, the evidence that we followed that led us to the next piece of evidence that landed on the door of Terry Nichols and Tim McVeigh. And when I go through that process, and we did, I thought, very well during the trial, just laid out piece by piece how the evidence led us to these two defendants. I do think it built confidence. I mean, I didn't have anybody come to me and say, you jumped to a conclusion, you didn't get the right guys. I've never had anybody say that to me. Some people might question, well, what about that John Doe 2? And we'll talk about it. But I think it was a stabilizing force. I mean, it's one of the things that I teach in my office every single day now is the process matters. Doing it the right way matters. And it's important for people to have confidence in the criminal justice system. If we lose that, in my view, we lose our democracy, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the same thing, you know, whereas I think that I mean, what the feds did was really foundational. I mean, that gave, if they had not done what they had done and done it in such a way that was so fair, reputable, all of that, no third world country look to it, but just really well done, then there would have been a whole nother angst going on. And so in many respects, the justice that my office was dealing with was not the sense of what will the world say. It was these several hundred citizens have a right to feel like they've had their day in court and to believe that. And indeed, when the verdict came in the summer of 2004, I'll never forget, because the First Baptist Church in McAllister downtown was the place where everybody they just did such a wonderful job of loving on all the witnesses and all that. And I remember when the trial was over, and there we were. And it had been, I mean, I'm telling you folks, it was such an intense 3-year fist fight to get that case done. But when I saw the daughter of one of the women who died go up and hug Suzanne Lavenue, one of the 3 intrepid prosecutors, hug her and say this out loud. Thank you. Up to now, nobody had been found, had been held accountable for the murder of my mother. And I'm telling you, it was like worth every bit of it, every bit of it. And I was grateful. And anyway, so that's it. So.
Oh, absolutely. And it's hard now to even imagine a debate happening, because I do think it was so important. And it, you know, in the story that we tell here in the museum, like, we count on the trials and the evidence that was litigated and how we tell it, and the state trial did. It was an important part of the story, and so it's hard to imagine it not having happened, today.
For sure.
So you've touched on it a little bit, but in high-profile cases, not just these, but these certainly were, the rights of the accused are not always very popular, and so I'm wondering.
Are they popular in low profile?
Well, I'm curious as to why they're important, right? Like, why should the general public care about the rights of the accused, and both in these cases, right? But then also just more generally.
Well, some of you may or may not know, but after I left the U.S. Attorney's Office, I went into private practice, and I was the executive director of the Oklahoma Innocence Project, which is housed out of OCU School of Law. And many of those cases come to us from family members and defendants who have been convicted of terrible crimes, who believe that they didn't receive a fair trial. To me, a fair trial means something. It's my core. It's important to me to make sure a family member, and I'm talking about the accused, or their friends might not like the final outcome of the case, but it's important that they felt and they know that the process was fair. So not hiding evidence, not waiting to the last minute to disclose a witness so that the defense can't prepare. Again, it is such a core issue for me, even now as the district attorney, to make sure the process is fair, because there are all sorts of post-conviction avenues for individuals that didn't receive fair trials. And I have seen time and time again, I saw it at the Innocence Project, and I see it every day now in my office, where a case goes up, gets tried, person gets convicted, the case gets reversed, and it comes back down, and the families now have to deal all over again with the pain and anguish of that trial. And so, having seen it from all sides, it's a core value for me, and that is making sure, and everybody, I think, for the most part, I should say everybody cares about the process and making sure that it was fair.
Yeah, I just, that's spot on, and I don't think we grasp, because we have been so comfortable living in this country for so long, what a thin line there is between those countries, and which maybe we refer to them as the kangaroo courts and all that sort of stuff, and we think, well, we'd never go there. Well, people have made, nations have made the mistake of saying that since the beginning of time. And so when we're now when I was a real young lawyer, well, those guys, the defense and everything like that, oh yeah, all that stuff. But let me tell you, it's like in the Bible, to the least of these. So if we don't take care of the least of these, one day we could be in that because we said something or did something out of favor, and it has become now fashionable to just do whatever we want because we didn't stand up in these early times. And so anybody I was a history major, and I'm just telling you, if we lose our view of history, all we're going to do is repeat it, and that's ugly.
Very, very good point. And there's plenty of documentaries you can turn to that exactly that, right? What happens when the courts stop protecting the accused and start flowing with the whims of politics.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of related to that, I think in both cases the pursuit of justice was the primary driver. But I'm curious, is there a difference between justice and the rule of law? Like, what is justice? And I think. This morning in the teacher workshop, we were talking about the sort of foundational principles of our country, and justice is one of them, right? And so how does that idea play into and play out in the details of how our court system works?
I don't see that they're different. I don't. I remember being on vacation with my 3 sons. We were in England, and I remember seeing a marquee, and it cited Micah. And it said, what does the Lord require of us? To seek justice, love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. And I feel that, again, is kind of a core for me. So I don't see those as inseparable. Justice is what doing the right thing, doing a prolonged and thoughtful investigation and prosecution, and putting that evidence before a jury of 12 people to decide whatever they decide. If they decide it's an acquittal, then, prosecutors don't necessarily like that, but the jury has spoken, that's justice, at least for that particular moment. If they decide guilt, then that is justice at that moment. So I don't see that they're inseparable, quite honestly. The core principle of due process and a fair trial and justice, from my perspective.
I just had this frightening thought of being back in law school and a professor tossing me that question and just knowing it was like a hand grenade going to go off. And I was thinking, I hope Vicki grabs that.
Thanks, Wes. You just threw me under the bus.
I try to get behind her as best as possible. But the one thing I just kind of wonder about is, so we think about the underlying what's justice look like, and but I wonder, since we are fortunate that we do have at a base what is justice and what are those foundational principles and the rule of law. I don't know the answer. This is why I was kind of glad I wasn't in law school and caught a question like that, because is the law, are the rules dependent upon what is the foundation? And I don't know. I don't know that. Again, this is why I don't teach in law school. But that's the only thing I wonder about. Because otherwise, I would say it's I totally agree with you, unless the rules have changed. Anyway,
Yeah.
So there's a responsibility for the rule makers to make sure that it's grounded in those foundational principles.
Yeah. What are the rules?
And our Constitution, I think, has done that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you have the right to counsel. You have the right to a jury trial. You have the right not to be a witness against yourself. All of those measures are constitutionally based.
And they're rooted in those foundational principles, so they do grow. So thank you for letting me work this out in my head.
If you don't learn something while you're on a panel, did you ever even participate?
Maybe not so public.
So I have one more question because I know that we have plenty of good questions from the audience. And so as I ask this question, if you haven't and you have something in your head that you'd love us to address, jot it down on one of our cards, and we have staff members walking around and picking those up, and we'll get to those in just a second. So my final question is taking us all the way to today in 2026. Public trust. I mean, and so you mentioned that you felt like the justice system was integral to the fabric of our democracy. And I certainly don't disagree. But I'm wondering, in 2026, with public trust in our institutions being so important, how can the justice system impact that public trust? All right, does it have a role to play in making sure that our democracy continues to stay strong?
Okay, I can tell you, again, I go back to these are kind of core principles for me, but every day in my office, that's an exaggeration, every Thursday in my office at 4 o'clock, we have a training session for the young lawyers, because lawyers that come to my office are right out of law school. They're 1, 2, 3 year lawyers. And so ethics and the rule of law and due process is what I teach every Thursday at 4 o'clock. We turn evidence over early. We turn over all the evidence. Why? Because my belief and my understanding of the rule of law and justice is that it is not a trial by ambush. It is a trial where there's full disclosure of the evidence, and there is a process that we have abided by for 250 years, which allows a jury to review that evidence and make a decision of somebody's guilt and innocence. So, and I work very, very hard, not just in training my office, but I'm out in the community a lot, talking to people in the community about the justice system, because I want them to trust the system. If they don't trust the system, what people are going to sit on juries? What people are going to listen to the evidence and make a decision that's evidence-based and not just based upon a principle or a narrative that they've heard on the news? So I am actively engaged weekly with the community to help build that trust in the criminal justice system.
That's really good, really good. I'm thinking the changes I would make if I could go back in time. I'm like, yeah,
You wanna
I
come
love
back
that
to the
Thursday
office?
afternoon. No. But I do remember one thing that I would tell my staff, and that is that when they stick the camera in your face, you've got about 8 seconds worth of commentary to establish why what you did should not undermine the public's perception of justice. Because it's a short hike.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a short hike.
That's true.
So, yeah, and the small things, it matters, because what's going to get, they're not going to be talking so much. They're not going to be lauding the wonderful things, as you well know. They're not going to laud those things. They're not going to be applauding how wonderful these things are. They're going to be finding that the people are going to be talking about that one instance in which something fell down, and that does everything. So, anyway.
Okay. And so we have a pile of questions that they're working their way through. Leslie here has the mic, and we'll get to those in just a second. We'll try and get to as many as possible.
You take these. I'm throwing him under the bus now.
Hello there. So I'm still going through the questions, but we do have two that are very similar, and so I will ask that question first. It is, why was Nichols held accountable for state deaths rather than McVeigh?
McVeigh was dead.
Well, I mean,
or,
that
or
was
shortly thereof.
Yeah,
Shortly.
that was a state decision. I hate to drop that in your lap, but again, under the federal law, we don't have murder charges for individuals that are killed in a federal building. I mean, that's a state prosecution of that. And so we charged all the murder counts that we could, and that was the federal officers.
Yeah, but he pushed his way into, I mean, he just threw away all of the stops so that he could be executed.
Right, and he got the death penalty.
Right.
That's right.
He was executed in 2001, which is before 2004 when the state trial happened.
Like that, but it was around the time that I came into office, and so he was out of there was no conversation about him.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I get this question from students all the time that don't really have a good sense of like going on death row and the process, going on death row and the process.
Yeah.
But being executed, right, just so convicted in 97, executed in 2001 was only because he had waived the rest of his appeals.
Fast.
That's very fast, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He waived his appeal, right.
Okay. The next question, you do a great job of defending the justice system. How can we, as citizens, best respond to the rise in conspiracy theories that harm the reputation of the justice system?
That's to you, Vicki. I can tell you have an answer.
I did warn you there'd be some pointed questions. So.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking like on an individual basis. I mean, I think education is important. That I educate my grandchildren about the justice system, that I sit down with friends and their family and educate them. So I think, and I know that sounds kind of ridiculous, but I think education is what each of us can do to help strengthen our fabric of trust in the criminal justice system. I mean, it's easy for me to say, right, because I'm in it every single day, and as I said, I'm out in community, and I'm talking to them, and I'm answering questions about how we do things and how the process works. But I think for individual citizens, I mean, there's enough in the public sphere that you all know about or read about that you could sit down and educate somebody that had questions about it. It's not a perfect system, but I think for the most part it's the best system that we have. It was kind of a sidestep.
But this is hard. And I literally, as I'm going in my head, I just thought, maybe even, but I think that part of the problem is is that we treat a lot of these, you know, on one hand, you want people, we have a system of free speech, and we don't want to start, you know, doing whack-a-mole with people that are speaking out sincere things. On the other hand, we can probably also try to be discerning citizens and not pet the dog. So if you are seeing things, we become these conspiracy things come into a place of becoming gossip, and that's just nothing but damaging. It's one thing to be discussing and really working. If you're really working through some stuff, and then there's just becoming a gossip, and then you're part of the problem.
Good point.
So I'm interested in the last time I talked with Bob Ricks, who was FBI, big role in the investigation. He always likes to point out how there were over 1 million man-hours of work the FBI put into the investigation, which meant now they had the people to do it, right? And so a little bit different than the state trial, but 1 million, I mean, that's going down every single avenue and making sure that every single lead had either a dead end or, you know, led somewhere. And I think that is something that surprised a lot of people when he said that. That's a big number. Mm-hmm. Now, I think if you ask Brian Hermanson, the lead defense attorney, why it took so long to get to trial and for the state, it was
just reading the reports.
Yeah, reading through the evidence. And so, do you think that is something that is obvious to the public, or is that just behind the scenes? And
that's too much in the weeds, but it's really true. I mean, it was breathtaking. Right. Just the sheer quantity of stuff. And so, as much as Brian drove me crazy, I just got to tell you, he was right. And I like him. Okay, don't I want you. But it was unbelievable. The quantity, so anyway.
Along that line of discussion, we do have a question from a student as well. If the building was destroyed, how did they find the evidence to prosecute Timothy McVeigh? What type of evidence do you find to prove someone guilty who committed a bombing?
Yeah. So, and thank you for asking that question, and I'm so proud of you all for being here and listening to us chatter up here. This is an important part of our history, and it does my heart good that you all are in it and learning about it. But let me explain what happened. So the bombing occurs. There is a crater, 20 feet by 30 feet in front of the building. I can't remember exactly how big it is, but there's a crater. They immediately covered the crater to preserve evidence that might be in that crater from a bomb. The very first lead that investigators get is the rear axle of the Ryder truck. It is hurled through the air from in front of the Murrah building about a block and lands in front of the Regency Tower. That rear axle gave us a VIN number. That VIN number led to the Ryder Truck Corporation. Ryder Truck Corporation then told us that truck was actually leased or being leased out of Junction City, Kansas. Okay? Junction City, Kansas, investigators converge on Junction City. I don't know how many thousands of investigators and FBI agents were there. They go to Junction City, Kansas, to Elliott's Body Shop, where the Ryder truck was rented from, and they start asking about information. Who leased a Ryder truck in the past week? They get the name of Robert Kling. Robert Kling, they learned very quickly, is a fake name. So then they ask for a composite sketch artist to come in, and they write a description. Now, this is back in the day, right? Not everybody has a phone that they can take a picture of, and there aren't cameras in every business. So they do a composite sketch of Timothy McVeigh, and if you've seen it, you have a copy of it here in the museum. If you compare that to what Timothy McVeigh actually looked like, it's spot on. Armed with that composite sketch, agents and officers went throughout Junction City, Kansas, saying, have you seen this guy? Have you seen this guy? They land at the Dreamland Motel. The Dreamland Motel is owned by Liam McGowan. They show her the picture, and she says, "Oh my gosh, that looks like the guy that was in room," I think it was 20 or 22, I can't remember the exact room. But she said, "That looks like the guy that was here at my hotel, and he left on Wednesday morning." So the agents then get the lease for that room, and it's signed by Tim McVeigh. So even though the building was destroyed, the point I'm trying to make is the evidence was external. Once we got the room number and we knew Tim McVeigh had rented that room, we start getting the phone calls. We know that he's using a calling card. That helps connect the co-defendants together, Timothy McVeigh to Terry Nichols to Michael Fortier. And that's how the case is built.
Leave it to a student to lead us to where we should have started. Excellent. Yeah.
Good job. Good question.
Okay, and that answer leads to, why did Michael and Lori Fortier get off so easy?
You know, it's one of the, I was going to say terrible things. It's not a terrible thing. We have to have cooperating witnesses in cases. And in order to get a witness to cooperate and give us evidence of the conspiracy, we have to have a member of the conspiracy that can tell us about it. And so sometimes you have to offer deals to people that are involved in horrible things. I mean, I can tell you we do it every day in the DA's office with people that are dealing drugs, right? We're not in the drug conspiracy. We don't know, but we need somebody that can tell us who's there. And that's why they got off early. I mean, he got some time, Michael Fortier did, but not as much, obviously, as the other two.
Then we have some specific questions, so I'll start with Wes Lane. And it's 2 questions.
Ooh.
How did you prioritize keeping your character and confidence in a situation where many opinions, especially those in high power, were contradicting your decisions about having a state trial for Terry Nichols? So how did you keep your character and confidence? And the second part of that is, how did the Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols case affect you as a person?
Wow, that's that brings up a couple of different things that might all just kind of wind together. You know, I was talking to a young lady outside, and it was, I learned a good lesson, and it first comes out of we've talked about foundations of the law, but I think we also need to understand what are the foundations of the heart within each one of us. And so my foundation, the rock that helped me make a stand on was quite honestly, I'm a follower of Jesus. Now understand that, what does that mean to me? That means that I have the two, what are the 2 greatest commandments? Love God, love your neighbor. And so there are I'm not going to do anything, or let's put it this way, the goal is for me not to do something that wavers off those core commandments of even as a prosecutor, love God, love your neighbor, and all that goes with that. And so what the decision I had to make early on in this case was I willing to die on a principle? And if so, what hill of principle was I willing to die on? And so that question early on, when we start having people that you like, that you care about, that you want them to think nice things of you, that you want, and everyone in this room, all you young folks over there, excuse me, every one of you struggles with that, because every one of us struggles with this. You see social media. What do they say about me? What do they think about me over here? And if we tether ourselves to the winds of public opinion, we are doomed. And so with the Nichols case, what I literally had to do is make a decision of what hill of principle was I willing and prepared to die on, no matter what anybody said. And that was that when I decided we were going to go forward, and even though for 3 years after I had made the decision in September of 2001 that we're proceeding, it was still 3 years of people tugging at me, trying to get me to come off of that, and it was hard. I'll never forget this one time. I mean, I'm telling you, I was just so down. I remember making a journal entry, and just reflecting on how lonely this job is, how utterly lonely, which you darn sure know what that's like now. And it's because I had something and someone to be tethered to that got me through to the finish line with my character intact. And I knew it was. No matter where other people said, well, they don't like me, they think I'm a so-and-so, and they did. It didn't matter because I was only looking for the approval of one. And that simplified life a great deal. It didn't make it easy, but it simplified that.
Thank you. And Vicki, for you, down a different path, how did you talk to your kids about the bombing and your part in the prosecution? And the second part of that is, how did the Timothy McVeigh case affect you as a person?
So, how did I talk to my kids? Well, I mean, it was really Michael having to feel the pain of losing his baseball coach in the middle of baseball season. Those boys, I mean, Michael was 10, 11. Those boys finished that entire season of baseball without their head coach on the third base line. At his funeral, every one of the boys wore their uniform to Mike Weaver's funeral. So talking to my kids about it, they understood the significance of that moment. The hardest decision was talking to my husband and saying, I'm going to go to Denver. I knew I was going to Denver, and it wasn't going to be a weekend, right? I mean, it was 18 months away from my family. So there were, I don't know that there was really a conversation. I think my kids knew inside the importance of this event, the importance. I mean, I made a promise to Donna Weaver at the funeral of Mike. Both Scott and I, because he was working in the command post at the time, he was an OSBI agent. And we looked at her and we said, we're gonna make sure the people responsible for this are held accountable. And my boys knew that. And so we didn't really have to have a lot of discussions about it. It was extremely hard. I've never been away from my family like that. When you talk about being anchored, I mean, when you have family and young kids, I felt like that was kind of my anchor, and I lost them for 18 months. Probably what also led a lot to the trauma that I had as a result of being there. And then how has the trial affected me? You know, I was born in Oklahoma City and moved away when I was 10. My mother was English. My dad worked for the Defense Department. And I came back to Oklahoma to attend college at OU, and obviously went to law school and raised my family here. And so on April 19th, 1995, my thought was of my home and the people that make this great place their home. That's what I thought about. And I remember I mean, it was really hard being part of the prosecution team. I'll tell you that. It was extremely hard. Not only were we working 12 hours a day, but you know, you're away from your family, you're missing out on birthdays, and but what kept me going and what drives me now is this place. It's the heart of Oklahoma City. It's who we are as a people. It's one of the reasons why I made this decision to run for DA, and I'm not doing campaign stuff, but a lot of people thought I was crazy. Why would you do that? You know, everybody's going to hate you. Why would you do that? Because the city matters to me. It matters greatly to me. The criminal justice system matters to me. I want it to be done right. I want there to be respect. I love this place. My kids live here. This is a place that I wish the world, maybe I don't wish because I don't want them all to move here, but I wish people knew what we had here.
Yeah.
Wow. It's, I think, an excellent reminder, both questions, that our government and our systems are made up of individuals who are making choices, right? And we talk about upholding our democracy. It's not like there's some magic big thing. It's individuals, right? And citizens and people who do it. And this is a good reminder, and it weighs on us, and there's personal costs, and I mean, just really beautiful moments right here. So why don't we give them a round of applause and thank them for being here.
Good job.
And if you would, give yourself an applause for being here. Thank you so much. Now, that was not as loud. But this only exists because you come, and so thank you so much for being here. If you have a moment, I know we're like right at the end of time. We want to hear what you have to think, what you think about this programming. There's a QR code on the screen. We'd love your feedback, if you would. Not only does this allow us to make these things better, but it also allows us to go after funding so that we continue to do it. And so please, if you would, take a moment to give your feedback. If you are leaving, you need a voucher on your way out. Just make sure you grab one. With that, I hope to see many of you again next month for our February Better Conversations. And I hope I see you out in the world, right, being a change for good. So thank you so much.